Good morning, everyone. It is 5:21 a.m. Eastern time here. So I'm going to say the times now when I do videos pretty early so that you're not seeing massive differences in prices, so you can kind of put it into perspective. But in today's video, we're going to talk about where the liquidity is as far as for action moving forward and the potential ranges we can potentially be in to try and grab some of that liquidity to go to the next level to ascend here. And I'm going to cover it on a number of coins just to kind of put things into perspective. But where these coins are settling right now, it's not a mass gap between where that liquidity can rest in both areas, really, to the upside, to the downside, and where you can potentially see those rejections. Where we've risen and consolidated at, we consolidate into a much narrower point that we can go down and grab some liquidity, go up and retest, or we can ascend from here and see how strong that resistance is on the other side. So it's a very narrow window here on most of the assets. So it shouldn't be a violent, unless we have like a massive sell-off or something on the macro level, but it shouldn't be a violent change here. We're going to start with the market indicator, which Bitcoin is resting at around 24,200 right now. And if you're looking at just standard like retracements here, you'd see that Bitcoin, if it had to go down and retest, it's going to be similar to what has played out before, where we grab liquidity at, which is around the 22,000 range. Now, if we did have to consolidate down that far, again, we could see a pretty rapid sell-off here as once we get to around 23. But typically that's where the liquidity has been resting at around that 22 range. And on the upside here, based off of where we're consolidating at now, since we're so close to that 25 range, our next take profit range for people who are trading and stuff like that, which can turn into some resistance, is actually going to be around 26, which is a little bit higher than that 25 threshold. And the reason why that can kind of change things is that puts us above the previous resistance point, and that puts us in the gap territory. So at that point, we can start seeing how deep will we go into that zone before sellers come in, and will that be 28,000? Will that be 30, or will it rise and fill the gap completely to 33? It depends, because this wasn't a singular candle. This is obviously over a period of days. And I'm sure there was, if we go back and look at the live action, there was a lot of back and forth in between here. Ultimately, sellers were able to get it down. So if we did break above that 26 range, don't expect that to be a smooth battle, especially during live, because these are daily candles here. So don't expect that to be a smooth battle, especially as it's happening. But that will theoretically put us in gap up territory. So that is something we can kind of see here on the next leg up. So if we take that into account here, let's take a look here on the other side. Or Ethereum, similar here as well. Again, as long as we don't get that breakdown above that 1497, that $1,500 mark, it won't be any trouble, because that can certainly put Ethereum into perspective here and have a massive sell-off. But as of right now, we're doing fine. Got a decent rejection here, building up strength at the 1600 mark. The next stop obviously would be like the 17, and that really just depends off of, in my opinion, Bitcoin's action. Because if we see here, this is a solid candle, so this can, if we fill this on one of the dailies, it can certainly take us up here. But then of course we have another one as well, which can take us to over the 2000 range, because we've seen this on this side here. It didn't quite fill, and this is a perfect example. I was talking about with the previous chart with Bitcoin, and the fact that this wasn't a singular candle. So it can cause some choppy action here in later patterns, but typically you'll see a similar pattern get filled. So what I'm saying is, if you take a look here at this daily, and you'll see that if you're saying we're going to break above the 1700 and retest like 2, it's possible to fill this just like these were filled, but it wasn't as clean. So you'll see like some daily here, you close slightly down, but then you ultimately filled. Gaps typically filled, but just kind of how clean it is and stuff like that really just depends off of what type of gap it is. So this is obviously a bunch of this is a bunch of battles here going back and forth. So ultimately, the sellers kind of took control here back when we were having a sell-off in the market, but the battle on the daily is kind of reflected a little bit more, so you can kind of see what's going on those previous on those gaps that kind of came later. So that's kind of what you can expect on that that Bitcoin range, but with the potential run to 30. Let's take a look. Here with Doge, you'll see that some indecisiveness here on the lower volume, but this is great that it's going sideways, because you'll see that the liquidity here for Doge is going to be tight as well. I took some notes here prior to the video starting. So for Doge, you'll see that it pretty much how it's already played out around like the 7.75 range if we had to go down and grab liquidity. And on the upside, we'd be looking at around the 9.32. So those two ranges here. So we're talking about maybe a penny above and a penny below for Doge to grab liquidity here. But as of right now, you obviously see this undecisiveness in the market and this trending sideways, which is fine, because you'll see that we're kind of chugging along here, and this builds up these ranges. Because as I've said many times before, I prefer a staircase versus a rocket ship for a number of reasons. So it's trending sideways, grabbing that liquidity here. Again, another tight range. So I wouldn't say you're threatening to, even for this, we know we bounced off of it before, but if you're looking at a continuation, which I believe this is unlikely, we'd be saying something slightly above the 750. So we're talking about maybe like another 0.10 below that liquidity pool. So maybe a rejection off of here if it had to grab liquidity, but I don't see it closing down there unless something, again, happens crazy in the macro. So unlikely scenario. And then obviously on the extreme side of that, we'll be looking at around 10. But again, those are the extremes. Let's take a look here at Nano. Rejection to the downside, some consolidation as well around a 39. So the thing with Cardano is it's gotten several tests, around 3 at around 43 cent. So that's going to be that resistance level is certainly strengthened for the asset here. So when it comes down to breaking that, we're certainly going to need to move probably that Bitcoin 28 range, 28.30 range to get some momentum here, just to see if there's a allocation of institutional funds that comes into the market, and you can probably come up and break it. But we've had 3 tests there before, and after that third rejection here, we saw what happened. So not in a threat to fill anything to the downside severely until around 32. So still have around like a 7-cent window here. So I wouldn't start to be concerned unless we filled below 35. So as of right now, I just will put it in the same category as the previous coins that we've looked at, as far as for just trending sideways and looking for liquidity. Around 35, I'd start to get, depending on how you're playing the coin, I'd start to get concerned or excited to get more, because more than likely, you're probably going to see something to the downside. So this is going to be where we're going to be looking now. We got a rejection here. This is BTC, so I just switched the chart. So we are rejection here. We'll see where this candle closes, but we're looking at that tight range there. And again, worst case, if you go to my going down, is 22, which is not really that bad. But with the volume declining, we'll need to be at one of those points relatively soon, because when you have volume declining, it's not going to trend sideways forever. And this goes for all the coins that we talked about. It's going to go to one of those liquidity pools. And typically it will go down and grab some liquidity before it can come up and retest. So just kind of keep that in mind here. But recent rejection, we'll see where this candle closes, and then I can get like a more accurate time frame to see when we can see a break either way. I just need to know where this candle closes, so I'll be able to grab some info on that later tonight. So those are where the liquidity pools are. If you like anything I had to say in this video, like, subscribe to the channel, share the video with a friend. I appreciate all of you. Thank you, and I will see you in the next video.